Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that honestly completely flips the script on personal growth. We're talking about the illusion of healing. You know that feeling when you start trying to better yourself and suddenly your whole life feels like it's falling apart? Yeah, that. Before a genuine new chapter can actually begin, those hidden shadow parts of yourself are going to rise up. It feels chaotic. It feels painful. But here's the thing. It's not a sign you're failing. Not at all. It's actually a completely necessary unearthing. Think of it like a lake. To get the water truly crystal clear, you have to stir up all that thick mud at the bottom first. It gets turbulent, sure, but it has to happen before everything can finally settle.
So I want you to just pause for a second and ask yourself a really honest question. Are you burned out by your own self-improvement? I'm serious. Society pushes this relentless narrative that if we feel stuck or if we're carrying around this deep, heavy exhaustion, the answer is just to try harder. We're told to think more positively or squeeze more habits into our day. But what if all that constant effort is exactly what's burning you out in the first place?
I mean, look around. We're completely surrounded by this massive, multi-billion-dollar wellness industry. And its entire playbook is based on telling us how to feel better by simply adding more stuff to our routines. You know the drill, right? Buy this specific rose quartz crystal. Download yet another mindfulness app. Stare into the mirror and force a smile while repeating morning affirmations. Or literally burn sage in every single corner of your apartment. And if you still feel anxious, well, the industry basically tells you that you just haven't found the right crystal yet or you're just not manifesting hard enough.
Now here is where things get really interesting, because the brutal truth discovered by the legendary psychologist Carl Jung goes totally against that modern self-help agenda. Jung spent decades actually studying measurable human transformation. And his findings? Well, while the wellness industry says you grow by adding things to your life, Jung realized you actually grow by removing what is keeping you small. It is a super simple but incredibly confronting reality that the modern market pretty much wants us to ignore.
Let's put it this way. You absolutely cannot pour clean water into a contaminated tank and expect it to somehow magically stay clean. You can pour all the positive affirmations and expensive app subscriptions you want into your mind. But if the foundation is still tainted by old, unaddressed wounds, nothing changes. True healing is hard work. It literally means letting go of the deep psychological patterns that you have probably built your entire identity around.
So let's be real with ourselves for a minute here. Think about all the energy, the sheer amount of mental effort you've spent over the last few years trying to stack up these so-called positive habits. Has it actually made you feel whole? Or are you secretly fighting an invisible psychological war? Are you just performing the act of healing, while behind closed doors, feeling way more exhausted than you ever did before?
Which brings us to the next phase, the collapse, and why true healing often feels exactly like total destruction.
To really understand why this collapse even happens, we need to talk about what Carl Jung called the persona. Look, for years, you've probably worn this mask just to survive. It's this highly curated version of yourself that you constructed to earn approval, dodge rejection, and frankly, just make the people around you comfortable enough to stick around. Without even realizing it, you've built an entire false identity around this performance of being acceptable.
And this is the absolute kicker. When you finally start to heal, letting go of those people-pleasing patterns doesn't just feel a little bit uncomfortable. No, it feels like complete and utter psychological annihilation. Those false versions of yourself have to be dismantled. The whole self you built around being a good or acceptable person literally has to die off so that the real, authentic you can take its place. And honestly, that destruction is terrifying.
Jung actually gave a name to this incredibly disorienting space. He called it the void. It's this messy, in-between period, which, by the way, can last a really long time, where your old self is gone, but the new you hasn't fully taken shape yet. You're literally grieving the parts of yourself that are ending. And since you've relied on those parts for your entire life, it is completely normal to feel totally lost and disoriented without them.
Now just think about the sheer irony of how our modern culture handles this void. The wellness industry tries to treat these massive, deep-rooted psychological fractures with, what, a $40 lavender bath bomb? It's kind of wild when you think about it. They've essentially turned personal growth into this permanent state of emergency, constantly trying to sell you quick, shiny fixes for what is actually a profound existential deconstruction.
I'm pretty sure Jung would literally laugh out loud at our attempts to good vibes only our way out of the darkness, because you just can't bypass the destruction. It's impossible. If your spiritual awakening feels like a relaxing day at the spa, you aren't waking up. You're just taking a nap. True, undeniable transformation demands that you face the collapse head-on.
So how do we actually handle this? Let's move into surviving the void and why you have to learn to stay in the dark.
Jung made this really important point. Finding yourself in the void is not a sign that something has gone terribly wrong. Actually, it's the exact opposite. It is the ultimate proof that something real is finally happening to you. Real transformation doesn't happen in safe, well-lit, comfortable spaces. It happens right there, in the messy, dark transition between who you used to be and who you are about to become.
But to navigate this darkness, you have to be willing to drop one of the absolute heaviest anchors we carry, the identity of being wounded. Now, let's be super clear here. Acknowledging your past trauma and understanding how it shaped you, that is absolutely essential. But Jung pushed us to ask a harder question. What happens when that wound becomes the core of your identity? What happens when the story of what was done to you becomes the only lens you use to view every single new experience in your life?
Making this change requires a massive shift out of victim consciousness. See, that mindset tells you that whatever happened in your past is the sole dictator of who you'll be tomorrow. But real healing, it requires you to integrate those experiences rather than making them the center of your universe. You have to shift your internal script from asking, "Why am I this way because of what happened?" to asking a much more powerful question, "Who am I becoming in spite of it?"
And taking that step means claiming total authorship of your own life, even when you have entirely legitimate reasons to stay the victim. When you finally emerge from that collapse we talked about, you're not going to be some polished, perfect, spiritually flawless version of yourself. You're going to be something way better. You'll be real. You become someone who acts from true authenticity instead of just begging for approval. You finally start trusting your own gut. And most importantly, you walk through the world as someone who had experiences, not someone who is their experiences.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought, kind of an ultimate test of psychological maturity. Ask yourself, are your past wounds still the bold front-page headline of your life, or have you done the brutal, beautiful work to make them just one chapter in a much bigger story? Remember, true healing feels like falling apart, because everything fake about you is being stripped away. So stop trying to build a positive penthouse on top of a crumbling foundation. Let the mask break, survive the void. Who are you actually going to be when you finally drop the exhausting weight of your past?